Let me move on to the third rationalization for studying language that has to do with globalization and mobility. This is the purposes of integration or inclusion, amply circulating in collective discourses about immigrants learning a majority language of the given host society. Overall in the world, this is a very important case, right? International migrants constitute a very large proportion of the world today. They are about 3.4% of the entire population. And we always imagine that the global south sends immigrants to the global north, and it is true that 72% of international immigrants are born in the global south. But also, the global south is host to many immigrants, about 43% of all international immigrants in the world. We do have to think of ideologies of language learning for integration. And Ingrid Piller has a very important book where she talks about this in very clear terms. One of the ideologies is to think that few immigrants and their children learn the majority language of the host country. Another one is to think that they fail to do so by choice. They're too lazy to learn it. And the third one is a bit more subtle and a bit more evil, perhaps. Immigrants are unaware of the fact that learning the majority language well is good for them. They don't know what's good for themselves. So they need to be informed about it through public awareness campaigns, and they require external incentives like citizenship tests to be motivated to learn. As I say in that book, she analyzes one of these cases as an example, a public awareness campaign in 2011 put forth by the German government to remind immigrants of the importance to learn German. Right? So here's the campaign. Does anyone know the Got Milk advertisements in the United States? Lots of famous people with a mustache with milk on it. And the slogan was just, got milk, got milk, got milk. And the purpose was to say, drink more milk is really good. Yeah. And the dairy industry was behind the campaign. So I don't know if the Germans took inspiration in that, but it's a very similar idea. So these were all celebrities in Germany, all from immigrant backgrounds. And they were photographed with the tongue sticking out and a painted German flag. And the slogan was, Raus mit der Sprache, rein ins Leben. Speak already, spit it out. Literally, it's just out with the language or the tongue. And the second part of the slogan, throw yourself into life. So learn the language, come on, speak it, and you'll have a better life. Yeah. Integrate. Embrace your host country through language learning. And this particular celebrity is actually a politician, she's a second generation Turkish-German woman who was born in Hamburg, but she naturalized German at the age of 18. Very famous case. First time a politician in Germany was not of German background. Is really language learning the majority language of the host society, the door that opens prosperity to immigrants? Surely it is part of the path to a good life, but researchers and teachers, we must be very cautious and very aware that that's not the whole story. Right? Once again, the same barriers, the same structural systemic oppression that affects all of us affects immigrants in particular acute ways. So James Simpson, there he is, in a chapter in the Handbook of Bilingualism, which actually Richard, there he is. It is out. It's been out now for a few months, so we're very excited about that. And James Simpson has a chapter there, and he summarizes really nicely this idea that the ideologies of integration or even inclusion need to be really carefully unpacked by teachers. He says, critically oriented teachers recognize that many immigrants are not only concerned with a wish to access the new language to enable them to operate effectively in daily life, but are also engaged in a struggle for recognition and equity. James and Mel Cook, if she's here, she's not here, oh. They have a really nice study of Toby, a 22-year-old student from Nigeria who was enrolled in a pre-access class at a further education college in London. And when they studied his case in depth and they interviewed teachers and they did an ethnographic study of it, they found out that his English, which he had learned in Africa, closed rather than opened doors for him. And his teachers were directing him, perhaps well-intentionally, but they were directing him towards realistic educational choices that put him on a firm downward trajectory in his educational aspirations. In another study by Mel Cook, she has a case study of 4 immigrants, and I found the story of Shung Wang particularly compelling. She uncovers really grave mismatches between Shung Wang, who wanted to get a job working with computers because he was very good at it, but he didn't have the formal education for it. He was already older age. And his teacher's ideas of what he wants and needs from English in his present life. And so she summarizes it by saying that this story in particular was a striking example of the inability of institutional procedures to capture in even a small way the reality of learners' lives. So the teacher was absolutely in the dark in terms of what Shung Wang wanted to achieve through his English. And this was also the case in most of the other 4 stories that Mel unpacked.